I personally think that governance via tokens is moronic. And the reason why I say that is because most people are fucking morons. Most people don't know what they're talking about. Most people don't know the economic repercussions of the things that they're voting on. Most people do not understand this. Just like now, you can daisy chain all that risk together, and you can add it all up, and it adds up. And right, and
Yes.
I'm just not a fan of that. And one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of that is because you cannot economically secure. You cannot use economic incentives to secure a wrapped asset. It is not viable. You always have to trust somebody that you think is cool. Some means typically a trusted federation of individuals, right? That which you may or may or not know who the hell they are, but there's a trusted federation of individuals that you trust will maintain that bridge and won't just walk away with the money, even though they are economically incentivized to take that.
Where Thorchain fits in the traditional sense. So if you could classify it in one word or one term, is it an app? Is it a series of wallets? Is it infrastructure? How would you classify it if you had to? Ready to use?
That's it. Yep.
How many assets are supported off the top of your head?
The total number of pools, I'm going to guess around 30. 30.
So if I have Bitcoin, there's about 30 other assets I could swap Bitcoin for that are not Bitcoin native assets, right? So
right.
Wow.
But there's also the DEX aggregation part of it too. So like you can swap to assets that we don't even have, right? We are so capital efficient as a protocol. We have the trade volume of like a curve, right? We have about the same trade volume as Curve today, which is obviously massive, one of the largest DEXs in the industry by trade volume. But our TVL is a fifth or the sixth the size of a Curve. Yeah, right. People are going to be commenting, and I'd be happy to jump on a space with people after the fact if they want to press me on these. I'd be happy to do it.
All right, so we're
happy to do it.
People are going to watch this. We'll end here, but we get a guaranteed Twitter space and a part 2 if enough people comment with their outrage about the and the title of the video will just be "People are fucking morons." Don't vote. You're about to watch an unedited video with Chad Barraford from Thorchain. In this video, kind of blows my mind. We talk about security, we talk about on-chain governance, and we also talk about the unique value proposition of Thorchain and the Rune token. Thanks for supporting the channel. Without further ado, enjoy. All right, I'm ready. Goal is like 25-30 minutes of recorded content. That usually does well. People get to learn about Thorchain, and this is great, man. Again, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate
no worries.
it. So, all right,
ready to go when you are.
All right, Thorchain's a Cosmos SDK chain. It facilitates swaps. Usually, you need a centralized exchange, right, to swap tokens that are not on the same network, right? Bitcoin for Ethereum, something like that.
Yep.
But you guys, you also have a borrow feature, a way to earn. We'll definitely learn more about this. And of course, I want to talk about the Rune token a little bit, even though we're not going to talk about price. We'll talk about Rune. But Chad, thanks so much, man, for taking your time.
Yep, happy to be here.
Well, definitely happy to have you. This is a Cosmos focused channel. You guys technically are a Cosmos chain. Before we started recording, you said you've been around Cosmos quite a while. So
yep, we started building Thorchain in 2019, and that's makes us one of the oldest and one of the most successful, one of the most oldest Cosmos chains in existence.
It is. That was like the pre-app era, right?
Yeah.
That was, everything was on centralized exchanges. So
yep,
that's what I'll do. I'll start off with some one-word answer questions, and then we'll dive deep. Of course, you could say no comment, or I don't know if the questions are a little off, but
that would make the interview really boring if I just the entire time I'm like, no comment, sir. No comment.
Right. It's happened before. So I want to start with like where Thorchain fits in the traditional sense. So if you could classify it in one word or one term, is it an app? Is it a series of wallets? Is it infrastructure? How would you classify it if you had to?
That's actually a really good question. I think fundamentally, I see it mostly as infrastructure.
Okay,
I see its role is to be a basic and primitive pillar of infrastructure for the entire cryptocurrencies, not just the Cosmos world, but for the Bitcoin world, from the Ethereum world, for the AVAX world, like just, Solana potentially one day. And so like it is there to exist to provide basic infrastructure to allow clean movement of money around the series of blockchains and the ecosystems that we have in this industry. That's its primary goal. That's what it primarily does. And that's what it's primarily used for today.
All right. So starting with that idea, infrastructure and the swaps that you talked about, the clean movement of money, are these the same thing as atomic swaps?
No. It's very different. So atomic swaps have been around for a long time using like this, I'm not going to get the technicals of it, but atomic swaps been around for a long time, but they've never been successful. There's been tons of atomic swap exchanges built through several different projects over the years. And we're talking like 5, 6, 7 years talking about.
A while, yeah.
Long time. And everybody saw this was like one of the holy grails of crypto, is being able to move, across chain without going through a trusted party of some kind, right? And atomic swaps were never successful, really. And that's because of a lack of liquidity. That's because of you can cancel atomic swaps like kind of mid-trade, which is kind of like offers opportunity that transactions never actually occur, right? Like if you're selling Bitcoin and I'm selling Ethereum and we're going to like connect and like swap our two assets amongst each other, but then an hour later the Bitcoin price kind of moves in up a certain direction, right, or down a certain direction, then we can just like cancel the whole fucking thing. And so like it really doesn't work very well because you don't really agree on a price. You agree on number of coins, but the price, obviously the value of those coins are constantly shifting. So they don't really work very well as a way to transfer money across value, especially in volume. If you've got size, get the fuck out of here. Go just go somewhere else, because atomic swaps are just not going to be able to do what you're going to do. And that's really what Thorchain did. That was so innovative. One of the things we did was so innovative was that we allowed you to be able to move across the ecosystems without needing to find a counterparty. There's always a counterparty to every trade at the exact moment when you want to trade it, not waiting a week or something like you might have to do in an atomic swap. So atomic swaps were a great idea on paper, but practically speaking, they just never really cemented anything real.
Got it. Okay. Thorchain, it's a Cosmos chain. Is it interoperable, or does it have any integrations with Osmosis, Kujira, Injective right now?
Not in that sense. It totally is possible to do that. So we can use IBC and other kind of like technologies to do what we call DEX aggregation, right? So we already had that set up on a bunch of exchanges on Ethereum, and I think we have one on AVAX, if I'm not mistaken, and a few in others. And I would love to integrate with Osmosis and other kind of ecosystem partners within the Cosmos world. And you could have that be done in a way that you could go from one point on Bitcoin to multiple transactions through multiple providers of liquidity, multiple DEXs, to end up to get whatever asset you want to get on the other side. So you can start from anywhere, get to anywhere, and from your perspective as a user, it's all a single transaction. Super clean, super simple, super fast. But in the background, there's a lot more complexity happening. There's a lot more transactions happening, a lot more things, kind of like things shaking hands along the way. But you don't know about that. You don't really care about that. All you know is just like, I got my Bitcoin and I want Injective. That's what I want to receive on the other side. And then you just submit your Bitcoin, and all of a sudden you just get Injective into your wallet. That's the idea, right? And that's what is so amazing about DEXs over sexes, is that sexes are naturally hostile towards each other. Sexes are trying to destroy each other, right? They want to beat, Coinbase wants to beat Binance, and Binance wants to beat Coinbase, and Kraken wants to beat OKX, and they're all fighting each other. But what's amazing about DEXs, which I would love to see this industry more adopt, is that we don't need to fight each other. We can just arbitrarily use each other as we need to get the liquidity when we want it, how we want it, to get the best price execution with as little complexity as possible. I would love for Thorchain to integrate with every DEX across every ecosystem, and then just connect every DEX with every other DEX in the entire crypto space in its complete totality, so that you can get any asset to any asset whenever the fuck you want, without being signed up, without getting KYC, without doing any of that shit, and just have it instantaneously. That would be remarkable. And
of course, the end user does not need to know what's happening. Like you said, I have this, I want this. Let me click a couple buttons.
Right. You don't need to know how a car engine works to drive. You just need to understand the pedals. You need to understand the wheels, and maybe clickers and turn signals and that kind of thing. But you don't know about spark plugs. You don't need to understand about carburetors. You don't understand about pistons or about the mixture of how much air to gas ratio there has to be so the piston fires but doesn't explode. You don't need to understand that shit. You don't need to be a fucking scientist. It's okay. That's cool. You just need to know, how do I just turn this wheel so I can get from my house to my office, whatever the hell that might be, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really need to know how any technology works. Technology is supposed to streamline things. So far, DeFi has a lot of the exposed parts that you don't need to see exposed, and we got to get to the point where it's click, click, click. I get what I want. I don't need to know what happened on the back end, and that's it. So
that is 100% where we are heading as an industry,
and it has gotten better. It has
both within Cosmos and outside of Cosmos as well. Like we are all universally trying to head toward that direction, and Thorchain is playing a very significant role because it can do something that no other DEX other than its own forks, right, can do, which is moving across, UTXO chains, EVM chains, Polkadot chains, crypto note chains, whatever, arbitrarily anything.
All right. Last question about for this part, the Rune token.
Yeah.
You're a layer one. Mm-hmm. Is the Rune token simply a gas and staking token, or does it do more?
Oh, it does a whole lot. Anything you do within Thorchain, whether you're holding or touching Rune itself, will always drive value into the Rune token, right? In all cases and scenarios, right? So you don't necessarily need Rune to pay for gas, for example. Like if you want to trade Bitcoin to Ethereum, you don't need to buy Rune. You don't need to have a Thorchain wallet. You don't necessarily need to hold the asset to do so. We specifically designed it with that mentality because that's how it should be designed.
Yeah.
Honestly. But if you want to run a node, then yes, you need to buy the Rune token, stake the Rune token, run your node. If you want to be an LP, right, and provide both the sides of the pool, right, of a Bitcoin pool is always comprised of Bitcoin plus Rune, right? The Ethereum pool is Ethereum plus Rune. The USDC pool is USDC plus Rune, right? And so you have to acquire both of those assets to be a dual side LP, and you get, a nice little yield from that, right? So the Rune is used heavily within the protocol to be kind of a utility token in some sense, right? But it's not money, right? It's not, a store of value. It's not a governance token. You don't vote with it, right? It's there just to provide the security that's required in order to us to be able to secure the external assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Doge and Litecoin and whatever else it might be. And so that we have a methodology to secure those assets in an economically secure way. Because if you secured it with external assets, with other external assets, well, if you Sybil attack the network, then all the money's gone, and you walk away with hundreds of millions of dollars in your pocket, and you walk away very, very well, very wealthy, right? You need the staking token to go to zero. You has to be able to go to zero. So if the funds are stolen, the staking token goes to zero to take money away from the attacker, so the attacker isn't profitable for the attacker to attack. If you don't have that, then you're just relying on altruism in the end, right? Of the validators to not walk away with the money. I'm not a big fan. I mean, if somebody wants to be altruistic, more power to you, enjoy it. But I am not going to lean on altruism to secure my assets. That is not a sensical thing to do, right? Which is why we talk about economic security on this protocol quite often.
Got it. All right. That's a good primer. We got a little bit of bits and pieces. When I heard you speak a couple weeks ago, you said that Thorchain achieves these different swaps, native assets, no bridged assets.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. What if you could, in a nutshell, what's the problem with bridged assets?
Oh, well, so when you have a bridged asset, and just to define the terms so everybody knows what we're talking about here, you're taking one asset on a source chain, and then you're creating a new asset on a destination chain that represents the value of that source chain asset to a 1-to-1 ratio, right? You're creating like what we call a wrapped Bitcoin or a wrapped ETH.
Yes.
A wrapped asset of one form or another. Now, the problem with that is you are taking on a daisy chain of risk when you do that, right? So as long as, if I hold wrapped BTC, for example, as long as BitGo is up and healthy and doing what it's doing and there's no problems, they didn't get the Bitcoin stolen from them, or they didn't lose it themselves through, inside job or whatever the fuck it might be. As long as everything's cool, then everything's fine,
Yep.
right? But I'm relying on the security of Bitcoin, right? Which you do when you hold the actual asset itself. And then you're relying on that, whoever's maintaining that bridge, which in this case would be BitGo. And then on top of that, you're relying on the security of Ethereum because the asset itself has its own,
Right.
its own things to be concerned of or to be aware of. And then I'm putting that wrapped Bitcoin into, some DeFi protocol. And now I'm taking on a fourth layer of risk to that system. Now you can daisy chain all that risk together and you can add it all up and it adds up. And right. And
Yes.
I'm just not a fan of that. And one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of that is because you cannot economically secure. You cannot use economic incentives to secure a wrapped asset. It is not viable. You always have to trust somebody that you think is cool. It's typically a trusted federation of individuals, right? That which you may or may or not know who the hell they are, but there's a trusted federation of individuals that you trust will maintain that bridge and won't just walk away with the money, even though they are economically incentivized to take that money.
Yeah. And in Cosmos, what I've seen the last 2023 was basically a shift from native assets secured by IBC to bridged assets, liquid staking derivatives. And if you've been using Osmosis all the time or the other DEXs, you're desensitized to this. You see, oh,
Yes.
USDC, you don't even think, is that bridged USDC? Is that native USDC? What the heck is that? We're
Yep.
desensitized to it, but
Yep.
it has helped with adoption, right? So have you weighed that risk against the possible increase in adoption of Thorchain? Was it never even considered because of security reasons, or is it like an ongoing kind of
Wrapped
conversation?
There was in the initial designs of Thorchain in 2018, we're talking a long time ago now, there was the idea of using wrapped assets within the design. And that was
Okay.
scrapped in 2019. I remember having a conversation with one of the co-founders personally. We were at a wine vineyard in Australia, right? And we were talking about the design, and we started kind of going back and forth about the benefits and the pros and the cons of wrapped assets. And we both basically came to the determination that they were just fundamentally flawed, and they break everything that we care about in this decentralized crypto ecosystem, right? IBC itself is a wrapped system. It is a bridging system. You are securing or locking down a source asset, and you are minting a fake coin on a destination chain that represents one-to-one. And you hope that tomorrow that the one that's been locked in the source chain is going to still be there, right? And hopefully will, and maybe it will. Who knows? Like I'm not a good fortune teller myself, but that's what you're relying on, right? And when you have a huge source of wrapped assets going into a destination chain, like Osmosis would be a good example of that. Well, now you have this thing is securing many assets of external chains, and this thing is just becoming more and more valuable, more and more of a honeypot for somebody to come around, like, if I just buy enough Osmo token, and stake it in my validator, or if enough validators that I own or control, I can just go ahead and take them all and then dump them on the market and then just walk away with a bunch of money in my pocket. That sounds interesting, right? If your defense is like, well, it would be very expensive for this attack vector. If that's your defense, I'm just like, oh, well, there are a lot of people in the world who have lots of money who want to make more money. I don't think that's a really good way of securing assets. It's like, well, nobody has that kind of money, so it's just not going to happen. It literally happened. That specific attack vector has actually happened in traditional finance, like I think in the 1980s. George Soros, I think it did against the British sterling or something like this, like a long time ago. It's totally possible, which is why I try to avoid that design flaw.
I think the other thing is bridged assets, liquid staking derivatives. When everything's humming along, it's great. Crypto doesn't have the privilege of being backed by governments that will literally backstop losses and reimburse you for losses. So the next bear market probably will involve a lot of unwinding of liquid staking tokens, bridged assets, and it's going to have to be done the hard way, right? And not like traditional finance. Oh, well, we have a bailout ready for you. Oh, well, we'll just stop trading right now just to help you out, right? So there's that as well. I think when I first saw the liquid staking derivatives, I was like, oh my God. I'm like, is this really going to be great long term? Bridged assets, I get it. IBC is limited to IBC. and you want Ethereum to flow, you want whatever, Polygon, Polkadot. But I think the next bear market, this is going to get it's either going to start there or it's going to have to end with these unraveling of these derivatives. They're not the actual.
Yeah, derivatives are, I mean, I'm not necessarily against them, but you have to admit that they come with a sense of risk, right? At some level, you have to acknowledge that they come with a sense of risk.
In short time intervals, maybe, right? It's great for your platform, but to hold them,
yes,
it's you're asking for it.
Yeah, to me, like I've always kind of strongly was against staking and the way that we see it in Cosmos land. Like I hate the idea that people just, who aren't running infrastructure, they just kind of like throw their coins up, and stake it and then earn a yield from money that nobody's paying into. So it doesn't make any sense that you would even make any goddamn money because you're not providing a value of service for. It's like if you go to a football game, right? If you're a player on the field and you're doing tackles or throwing passes or whatever, totally get it. You're participating in the game. But if you were going and you're just like observing, you're in the stands and you're just like rooting for your player who's actually playing on the field, and you're just sitting in the stands. You just bought a ticket to sit in the stands, and you're just like, cheering on the person that you like on that field. You are not decentralizing football at all. There's still the same number of players on that fucking field. It hasn't changed in a single slight. You are not decentralizing fucking a chain by just staking some coins, locking some tokens. It doesn't work that way. You need to have people.
A lot of people are not going to want to hear this, but
no, they're gonna yell at me, and you know what? Come fucking yell at me because I know you're fucking wrong. And if you actually think about it objectively, you will agree with me. The way you decentralize something is you get more people to participate in the operation of that network, participation in the network itself, not just standing on the sidelines and cheering. That's fucking purposeless. That offers no value whatsoever from a decentralization perspective, other than you just kind of showing your support, like rah rah, we're doing great. All right. If you want to improve the decentralization of something, run more fucking validators by different people in different countries. That's how you do it. You don't do it by staking more tokens and liquid staking and all this kind of shit. Nope. Doesn't contribute to it at all.
What about the LPers? I think the LPers get screwed in a lot of these platforms because they're choosing to put skin in the game. They're LPing, they're taking on risk, but the stakers are voting on all the proposals that directly affect the LPers who can't vote in most cases.
That's very valid question. So two things. One is, if you are an LP, you are providing a service that other people are willing to pay you for. That's critically important, because when I stake on Atom Chain or whatever, nobody's willing to pay me for that. Who the fuck would want to pay me for staking my tokens in the Atom Chain? Not a fucking soul in the world would want to pay me money for that. It doesn't make any sense because I'm not providing value for anybody else in the world. Therefore, why the fuck would I make money in that scenario? It makes no sense whatsoever. But if you're an LP, you are providing capital that allows people to move from one side to the other, and they're willing to pay you for that because you're providing a service. Now, being an LP makes complete sense to me. Now, your question is about, what about governance? What governance does an LP have? Now, that's up to individual protocols to determine how they want to run their governance, right? But here's what I like to say about this. I personally think that governance via tokens is moronic. And the reason why I say that is because most people are fucking morons. Most people don't know what they're talking about. Most people don't know the economic repercussions of the things that they're voting on. Most people do not understand this. Just like most people didn't understand what it meant for the UK to break away from Europe. Most people, they voted on it and had no fucking idea what the ramifications were, what it actually meant for the country, what it meant for taxation, what it meant for imports, what it meant for all these things. Most people had no fucking idea. And just because you have tokens doesn't mean your opinion is valuable. Anybody can have fucking tokens. Anybody can have an opinion. True. You can ask me my opinion about how it is to be a Sherpa in the fucking Mount Everest, and I can give you my opinion on this. But guess what? That opinion's worth jack fucking shit because I know nothing about being a Sherpa in fucking, in Everest. So tokens themselves oftentimes are not very effective because people don't know what the fuck they're voting on. They don't understand what they're doing. Two is, most people don't even vote. You generally have 2, maybe 3% of people voting, right? And oftentimes it's the founders, because they have the fuck ton of the tokens. that are that 2 or 3%, right? MakerDAO is a great example of this. Rune Christensen just makes a proposal and he votes on it himself and he just passes it through, right? That's fucking horseshit, and we all should acknowledge that. And if you don't acknowledge that, then you're fucking deluding yourself. I'm sorry, you are fucking deluding yourself. The best way to do it, to do governance, in my opinion, and this is much easier if you're layer one, like you are in Cosmos land. If you're a DAO on a smart contract on Ethereum, it's much more complex, more difficult to do. But in our world, it is the validators. It is the validators that choose the rules of all these things. Now, it's the validators' role to satisfy the LPs, because that's validators know that if they do if they just say, you know what, we're going to collect all the revenue ourselves, and the LPs get jack shit nothing, and all the revenue that's coming through, we're going to keep it for ourselves. We're going to vote for that. They know that if they did that, it would be a fucking disaster, and the tokens that they are holding would fucking, sink to the goddamn bottom with the Titanic, right? So you cannot have tokens vote. I'm okay with the idea of LPs voting because they have skin in the game, right? Yeah. They're actively involved, providing a valuable service for the protocol. I'm personally okay with the general idea of it. But to be fair and to be honest, like, validators are the ones that have the vast majority of the token. They have the vast majority of the exposure to the asset. In the end, if you look on the Pareto curve of the ownership of the token, you will see the validators, generally speaking, will have, 70% of the tokens to fucking begin with, collectively.
Yeah. And they're also voting with other people's tokens. So they don't need to have any skin in the game, not even stake tokens.
That's a problem.
Yeah, I know.
That's a whole other. That's a whole other
video.
That's another video. That's also nonsensical. I mean, I won't say nonsensical. That'll be a little bit harsh, but there's significant problems with that, because that would allow somebody to rug an entire protocol without having any skin in the game. They can just spend $50,000 on a really good marketing campaign and have a charismatic guy like, a Michael Saylor type who everybody fucking loves because he just pumps tokens all day and says, and it's like, hey, no, staking my thing because I'm famous, I'm well known, and then all of a sudden they go ahead and rug all the assets. Totally possible. Could happen one day.
Well, all right, we could talk about governance because there's so many moving parts just in Cosmos.
Yeah.
But Thorchain, why don't we walk through what a swap looks like? I have Bitcoin, let's say, on a centralized exchange. Yep. I want to swap it for something that Coinbase doesn't support. How can I leverage Thorchain to do this? I'm guessing I need two different wallets, right? I need a Bitcoin wallet and then whatever the receiving asset is. Yep. And Thorchain's in the middle. It's going to use the Rune token somehow to facilitate the swap. Can you walk us through that?
It's kind of the middle. So like I mentioned before, how it's like Bitcoin and Rune. All the pools are like asset plus Rune, asset plus Rune, asset plus Rune. So when you want to swap from Bitcoin to Ether, right? There is no single pair that exists within Thorchain between Bitcoin and Ether.
That's what I wanted to get into. Okay.
You insert the Bitcoin, you get out the Rune. The Rune goes into the Ether pool, and the Ether comes out and then goes to your wallet. In reality, you're never really touching Rune at any given moment. Really, it's just like facilitating the execution that you're trying to make. So you're not.
It's part of the infrastructure. Then
it's part of the infrastructure. It's part of the process of getting from point A to point B. It's in the middle, but you're not touching it. You're not engaging with it. You're not holding it. You're not price exposed to it. You're just it's just an interim asset to get from point A to point B.
Okay, and then, so the Rune token even on the website it says Rune is, I don't know what the wording is exactly, but it's actually correlated to the amount of deposits on the network or the value of the pools. Then, right? So people could buy Rune. I think I bought it on Kraken. Kraken has it, and now you're basically, without interacting with the protocol, the Rune token is going to move based on either the amount of liquidity, maybe the volume, the prices of the other assets. Is that right?
Yes. So because all of the liquidity of the network, the TVL, is paired with Rune, all the Bitcoin, all the ETH, all the Doge, all the Litecoin, all the AVAX, all the BNB, all the Atom token, like all that stuff. When we talk about that, is in the context of we call it deterministic price, meaning that we've taken external assets and we've paired it with Rune. We've locked it up into the network in a matter of speaking, right? And that's like the deterministic kind of like price of Rune at that given moment. And then there's a speculative price on top of that of just like the speculation of holding the asset, which makes it more valuable than that value. So at any given moment, you can actually calculate what is the market cap of Rune relative to the assets that it is holding within its protocol, right? You can actually make that pure mathematical calculation, and it's always some number. I don't even know what the number is right now off the top of my head. If I had to guess, it's probably around like maybe $2 or $3, something like this. I don't actually know. I'd have to look it up, but that's how that works, right? But then you have the speculative asset, but people just buying and holding it off chain, like not off chain, but outside of the protocol in a matter of speaking. And that's this Rune being held, and that's not paired with anything. That's the speculative part side of things.
Is there a preferred wallet that you guys recommend? I know there are probably a bunch of wallets that work, but
well, yes, there's lots of wallets that work. We as a protocol have decided to not make any UIs, and we don't, and there is no official UI. There's probably about 20 UIs in total, right? There's the MetaMask is one of them, Shapeshift, ThorSwap, Thor Wallet, DeFi Spot, a Trust Wallet, Ledger, like there's tons that you can pick from.
But none are officially made by your team.
None are they're all made by different teams, by different individuals who are not involved with the core protocol itself.
And I think for Cosmos people, you guys are going to have Leap Wallet support soon, it sounds like. And Leap Wallet is an awesome wallet to get around all the different blockchains. And
we are constantly in contact with many very well-known wallets. And
awesome.
And they're at different stages of their development of getting just not only just to hold the Rune token, but just to be able to facilitate trade swaps, earn loans, lending, like borrowing, all that stuff. Like we're in constant communication with pretty much every major wallet you can think of off your top of your head, and we're trying to advocate for them to integrate.
That's great. More options for people and more people will use the protocol if it's a wallet they already use.
Yep.
How many assets are supported off the top of your head?
The total number of pools, I'm going to guess around 30. 30.
So if I have Bitcoin, there's about 30 other assets I could swap Bitcoin for that are not Bitcoin native assets, right? So
wow. But there's also the DEX aggregation part of it too. So like you can swap to assets that we don't even have, right? So you might want to get like GMX token, for example, on AVAX. Right. And you can send in the Bitcoin, and then the network will swap the Bitcoin for AVAX, and then send the AVAX to like Trader Joe, for example. And Trader Joe will make the final trade to the GMX token, giving that kind of that long tail asset. And then you get the GMX on the other side without even holding any AVAX token for gas or any of these kind of things.
So then you're mainly servicing like the L1s, and then the project tokens are possible in some cases. Like
I think that's the general long-term vision of the product, is that we're just going to have more or less one token per chain, right? With the exception of stable coins for another conversation. But generally speaking, that's the way that I would see things. We just hold one token per chain, and then we lean on the local DEX of that particular ecosystem, whether that be Osmosis, whether that be Trader Joe, whether that be PancakeSwap. I don't know. Could be arbitrarily whatever it is, but we can lean on them because they provide liquidity for those longer tail assets. We have a different situation where because we care about economic security, we want to make sure that nodes cannot steal and be profitable about it. We don't have an infinite amount of security. We can't just take in untold amounts of Bitcoin and Ethereum and various assets. Whereas in PancakeSwap or in Osmosis or whatever, actually Osmosis you do care, but for PancakeSwap you don't actually care about how much BNB is deposited into the various pools. Same thing for Uniswap or SushiSwap. Like, don't really care. It has no relevance. They don't do security, right? That's offloaded, but to the layer one itself.
The layer one, yeah.
So they don't really care, but we have to care, and so we can't just have arbitrarily $1 billion of every token in existence. Like that would just be completely like we wouldn't have the security to uphold that and maintain economic security. So we have to be more choosy, right, in a matter of speaking.
All right, so let me see if I've got like the gist of Thorchain itself, right? So you guys, you consider yourself infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
You use the Rune token instead of bridged assets, basically, to facilitate swaps of various layer ones that ordinarily would need bridges or centralized exchange. The Rune token is that intermediary. I can go from Bitcoin to, 24 other assets without needing to worry about gas and whatnot, or holding the Rune token, even though it's involved. Is that,
It's
is that about
involved.
right?
Yep, it's involved in the back end, but you're not really exposed to that risk.
So
To be
then
honest with you.
what's on the Thorchain? So,
What's on it? It's so the Thorchain network itself is what we call the state chain, right? And
okay,
so it's where we hold the state of the different pools and their various
right.
steps and the various LPs and whatever else of
So
information we need to hold.
so since I'm dealing with the Rune token, it would be the Thorchain block explorer that's recording all that stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a block explorer like ViewBlock.io, for example, or I think the new one's called RuneScan, and there's actually a host of different other block explorers out there. But you can go in there and you can put in like a Bitcoin address or a Thor address or an ETH address or an Atom address, your Cosmos One address, whatever, and you can just put that in and you can see all the trades, all the transactions in and out of that particular address, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
All right. When I met you at that in-person event, the topic was lending.
Yeah.
You guys are known for swaps, right?
Yep.
That
Yep.
movement of assets. Talk about lending as it
Yeah.
relates to Thorchain and what that looks like.
Yeah, sure. At a high level, how I see it is that we spent years developing the technology and the cryptography required to be able to do chain agnostic or asset agnostic DeFi, right? And the first goal was just to do DEX, kind of cross-chain AMM swaps. That was like the first like utilization of that technology. And we did that, and out of the entire code base, like the actual swap logic is like maybe a couple thousand lines. The code itself is 150, 200,000 lines of code. Like you're talking that the actual infrastructure to run a cross-chain system with security and like monitoring and all these things, that is very complex. It took us a long time to build it. And I think actually Osmosis is now going to fork that code and reuse it on they're going to introduce Bitcoin into their own system now. They're going to fork our code, which is great. And I'll be happy to help them if they got any questions, right? But it took a long time to build and to solidify and to harden and all those kind of things. And the actual swap logic, the business logic, rather simple, not that complicated. So once we actually got all that done, settled, delivered, proven its security over years of running in production, like one of the oldest DeFi projects in crypto, really. I thought we could go beyond that and say, you know what? Bitcoiners don't just want to trade Bitcoin to ETH or Bitcoin to USDT, although they do. They also want to get loans, right? Because we had BlockFi and Celsius and Voyager, and they had what, 30-40 billion dollars worth of loans, right? So there's an appetite there. There's a strong appetite. There's a very strong appetite. Much more than Ether, right? Obviously, right? Much more. So there's a strong appetite for other DeFi protocols within UTXO chains specifically. EVM chains, they kind of already got it to some degree, right? But UTXO chains like Doge, like Bitcoin, like whatever else, Monero, right? Let's just say, like they want DeFi too. Why not, right? And so when we look at the infrastructure that we had built and the flexibility of what we could accomplish with such a powerful innovation in the space, was like we can do the DEX thing, the AMM thing. We did that. We were successful, right? We can also do borrowing. We can also do earning. We can also do a series of other DeFi protocols that are going to be asset and chain agnostic and provide the same quality of service. We don't treat Bitcoiners as second-class citizens. We treat them as first-class citizens, just like any other. Same as Atom, same as Bitcoin, same as Ethereum, same as AVAX, same as BNB, same as everything else. Bitcoin Cash, whatever, right? And so that was very appealing to me that we could take the infrastructure we already built and we could apply new DeFi protocols and we could do them differently and hopefully better than we see in our EVM world counterparts.
I have some asset. I don't want to do swaps, but I want to earn a little, let's say on Bitcoin or whatever asset you guys are accepting. Yep. Is this just as simple as a bunch of people are providing liquidity, the lenders on the other side borrow that in exchange for some fee, and then I'm earning some of the fee, the protocol's getting some of that fee, something like that?
So they earn product in the sense of like I can provide a single asset like Bitcoin.
Single asset, yeah.
Single asset, but I'm only price exposed to the Bitcoin side, and I get an income for that, right? So how that works is that you're putting the Bitcoin into the pool, which is Bitcoin plus Rune, right? But you're only kind of like levered on the Bitcoin side, and the other side, the people who are taking on both sides, the Rune and the Bitcoin side, they're taking on the IL risk that you're saying, I don't want the IL risk because I'm a single asset. I don't want the IL risk, right? And then the LPs are saying, you know what, I will take on your IL risk, but I will take some of your income too, right? I'll take some of your the fees that your capital is generating. I will keep a percentage of those, and how much the percentage is relative to how popular people are using the earn product versus being an LP.
So it's going to go through the same pool, the Rune Bitcoin pool?
It goes through the same pool. It generates revenue the same way as being a regular LP, but you're only getting Bitcoin exposed. You're only getting Bitcoin as your yield. You're not getting like Rune or anything else, right? You always get the yield of the assets you provide the network, right? Whatever that is, right?
Interesting.
So you are saying, in a sense, saying like, I want less risk. I don't want to take on price exposure to a second asset, but I want to get yield on my Bitcoin. I will take less yield and I will take less risk and I will be happy. And then the dual side person saying, you know what? I like Rune. I like Bitcoin. I'm a fan of both assets. I will take on the additional risk for the additional yield. It's what we call tranches in traditional finance. You have a low risk, low reward system with a high risk, high reward system, and you use those two kind of players to balance each other in a matter of speaking.
Got it. All right. And then from the other side of that, I want to borrow Bitcoin. It's going to come from that pool. I'll open a position with some collateral. How does that work?
That's a little bit different. So it doesn't come from the pool. So LPs and savers are not really engaged or exposed to lending.
Understood. Okay.
They're not. If people are borrowing money, that's not borrowing it from the LPs. It's not borrowing it from the people who are depositing to earn on their Bitcoin. Different system entirely.
Got it. Okay.
They are getting a yield from it because when you open a loan or when you close a loan, you have to pay fees when you open, you pay fees when you close, and those fees are going to the LPs and going to the earners. It's going to the validators who are producing revenue from, producing blocks, right? And so they get income from that activity, but they are not participating in outside of that.
Got it. All right. So you don't just have a bunch of TVL sitting somewhere doing nothing. It sounds like you're able to monetize it in two ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the swaps, first of all, revenue goes to the participants, right? The actual, those with skin in the game. And then you have the borrowing going on, right? So rather than just have the TVL, for the most part, on most chains, the TVL sitting there getting eroded by inflation, right? On a lot of chains, that's happening. You guys have monetized it for a bunch of participants, all the participants, really is what it sounds like. And that's how the validators generate revenue as well.
Yes, validators generate revenue through two mechanisms. What we call this the system income, right? And there's two sources of income. One is swap fees for people making trades and swaps and and the second one is just through inflation, through block rewards, right? The amount of block rewards, the value of the block rewards versus the value of the fees is about 50-50 today, which is actually remarkably good in our industry. Like most are like 90%, block rewards and like 10% on the fee side. We're actually much, much healthier than almost every other protocol in the industry because we're basically 50-50 at this point and growing more onto the fee side. And the reason why that is because we are so capital efficient as a protocol. We have the trade volume of like a curve, right? We have about the same trade volume as Curve today, which is obviously massive, one of the largest DEXs in the industry by trade volume. But our TVL is a fifth or the sixth the size of a Curve, right? And so we have a lot less mouths to feed in a matter, but we're so capital efficient. We can do highly like sized trades. I'm talking about like we've seen $6 million trades being passed through Thorchain's recent history, and we have wonderful price execution, which is pretty remarkable to think about, even with having such a low, relatively speaking, low liquidity in terms of the depth of those pools. So we are able to do things with our liquidity that no other protocol, no other DEX in the world is able to do today, right? And we're able to be much more capital efficient than any other DEX in the world, right? Technically any other SEX too, to be fair. Any other SEX or any other DEX in the world, literally. And we are able to do that. And because of that, we generate a lot of revenue. And because we generate a lot of revenue, the fees we generate is high, relative to everybody else in the industry, right? That's why we're at 50% fee generation, 50% block rewards today, right? And to be honest, and in a year from now, it's probably going to be, moving more side on the fee side.
Yeah, and hopefully the market is cooperating as well, right? Because then you'll really get stress test and have a chance to outshine competition. It sounds like. Well, did we forget anything? I feel like people got a really good look at just all the dynamics of Thorchain here. But if there's anything I forgot, we could talk about it, or we could save it for part 2 in the coming months and dive more into governance rants or bridge.
We should definitely
risk.
do a part 2 because I feel like people are going to really comment on this episode.
Yeah, for sure.
They're going to have some words and they're going to want to have a little bit of I enjoyed the
especially when I cut the clips for Twitter.
So, yeah, people are going to be commenting, and I'd be happy to jump on a space with people after the fact if they want to press me on these. I'd be happy to do it.
All right, so we're
happy to do it.
People are going to watch this. We'll end here, but we get a guaranteed Twitter space and a part 2 if enough people comment with their outrage about the and the title of the video will just be "People are fucking morons." Don't vote.
I mean, they are. Come on now. I think we all kind of know it. I'm just being honest here.
I would say a typical staker who's been burned before by governance would say, at least I'm voting with my own tokens and not a bunch of other people's tokens that aren't even paying attention. But no, you're right. I think personally, I'll end it here. We ask too much of these layer 1 tokens. They can't do everything well at the same time. Governance, LP, staking, incentives, community pool, it's impossible. You need the perfect.
It gets increasingly
perfect
complex
conditions
to manage.
Yeah. You need I've seen protocols attempt multiple tokens. I would like to see that work. I think LP positions NFTs can be introduced, especially for voting, but we'll see. It's getting better though. I think from the user perspective, it's getting better. People that stuck it out during the bear market, I think they're better able to size up risk, hopefully, and maybe we'll have more of an appetite for avoiding bridged assets and derivatives when they can for longer time frames. I think ThorSwap is a good option, man. I'm gonna play with it. I'm lucky I have centralized exchange access, but I have seen what's built on Thorchain. I was actually surprised that there's so much building. We could even talk about that next time as well. But
Yep.
Thanks a lot, man.
Anybody out there who wants to just learn more about Thorchain, obviously you can come on Twitter and kind of jump in. We do weekly spaces typically. I haven't done a space in a while because of holidays and whatnot, but there's always a Discord as well. And we always just encourage people just to try it. Just like get a UI like ThorSwap, for example, and try it out. Just do a trade, do a swap, see the experiences.
He's not saying to read the white paper, 75-page white paper. He's saying actually use it because they have a product, which is great.
Use it. The white paper is complicated. To be honest, Thorchain is one of the most complicated protocols in DeFi by a good margin, I'd even say. And I don't expect most people to really comprehend it. And if you are going to comprehend it, you're not going to do it by reading the white paper. You're going to do it over like months of study, to be honest with you. So I don't really encourage. I always encourage people to learn more. But the first thing to do if you want to get your feet wet is just try it out. Just be a user, be a trader, provide liquidity. If you wanted to earn some Bitcoin on your Bitcoin, for example, go ahead and deposit a little bit of Bitcoin. Give it 30 days. See how you do, right? And if you're not happy, then withdraw it. Simple as that, right? But if you want to start learning about like the mechanics at play, the economics at play, that kind of stuff, happy for people to dive into that well. But it'll just take you more than a day to do it.
We're getting closer to using cool stuff without having to worry about all that stuff. But I'll definitely do a video demonstrating some swaps. I'll put that up on YouTube. Thanks so much, man. I'm looking forward to doing this again.